We are following breaking news here at CBS Sports HQ. Antonio Brown will play for the Raiders Monday night against the Broncos. That is what Jon Gruden had to say not too long ago. Brown was back at practice today. Gruden said they're both ready to move on. And a run-in, of course, with GM Mike Mayock earlier in the week. I've got John Breach here to break things down. And boy, John, I thought Hard Knocks was over, my friend. My goodness, what are we experiencing here? We go from possible suspension to now him playing on that doubleheader Monday night. Your thoughts?
I mean, Tommy, he must have given the best apology in the history of apologies because, like you just said, 24 hours ago, we were talking about him possibly being suspended for week 1, maybe even longer after that altercation with Mike Mayock at practice. And now he talks to the team this morning, gives an emotional apology, and Jon Gruden is sold. They're going to get him on the field. And I think that when you look at what the Raiders, there wasn't really either all in or all out on Antonio Brown. Look, you're paying the guy $30 million. You can't have him sitting out games. You're going up against a Broncos defense. You're going to need your best players on the field, and Antonio Brown is your best offensive player. So if that gives you your best chance to win having him there. It is a little crazy to think that the Raiders are willing to overlook some of the things he's done. I mean, it has been a wild offseason. We have some stuff up there. The frostbite in France, threatening to retire because he wanted to wear an uncertified helmet in yesterday's altercation. So it has been crazy, but, Gruden, he said he's willing to put this all behind him and play this game and put Antonio Brown on the field.
You mentioned the last 24 hours, and it has been entertaining, to say the least, from afar. I don't know if it's categorized that way within the facility of the Oakland Raiders, but how would you best describe what we've learned about this franchise over the last day or so?
Well, I think that we've learned Jon Gruden is calling the shots because, look, there is no way Mike Mayock, after almost getting in a fight with Antonio Brown, came out and said, we need this guy to play. This seems like Mike Mayock has been very stern. He's been the stern parent. Gruden's been the kind of, we're going to let this guy do whatever he wants. We saw Mayock a few weeks ago issue an ultimatum saying you're all in or you're all out. At that point, Antonio Brown has missed 3 practices since then, so wasn't all in, but yet he's still on the team. So this definitely seems like Jon Gruden pulling the trigger, pulling the strings here, saying we need our best guys on the field. But the one thing to keep in mind, if you're playing Antonio Brown on Monday, you have no idea where his head's going to be. Is he going to explode if Derek Carr doesn't throw him the ball on every down? The last time Antonio Brown played the Broncos, he got shut down by Chris Harris, and that's what led to the meltdown that we reached right now. He ended up pouting his way out of Pittsburgh, and that series of events led us to where we are right now.
All right, let's welcome in senior NFL writer Pete Prisco, who joins us over the phone and joins our conversation. Pete, Jon Gruden says Antonio Brown will play. What does that say to you?
Good for him, because quite frankly, he just opened himself up to having a disastrous locker room and a disastrous team. And Jon Gruden is sitting there looking at the player saying, hey, the value of the player is much more than counting against him in the negative of being a bad, disruptive player in the locker room. So, hey, good for Jon Gruden. He decided to keep him. He's going to have to live with it the entire season. It's a major mistake. It's also a slap in the face, no pun intended, to Mike Mayock. I mean, if Mike Mayock wanted him to be suspended, you didn't suspend him, and he's your general manager, I think that's a bad look for the Oakland Raiders.
You've obviously been around a lot of teams and a lot of locker rooms. How do you best sort of describe the Gruden-Mayock relationship right now?
Well, Mike Mayock works for Jon Gruden. That's basically the way it is. Mark Davis gave Jon Gruden the keys to the car, and he's going to drive it any way he wants to. And Mike Mayock and whoever else has to fall in line. And so it's a bad look. When you got a player threatening a general manager, I don't care if he got in front of the entire team and started weeping in front of him. You can't have him on your team. Get rid of him, get him out of there, and move on. He's not worth the aggravation.
All right, let me bring John Breach back over here and ask him about. Oh, we don't have John anymore. Stick with Pete. Pete, I still have you over the phone, so let me continue the conversation. So now let's turn our focus on the field. Again, Antonio Brown will play on Monday. What does this do for the Raiders as they prepare for Denver Monday night?
Well, I mean, it's always good to have a good player on the field, and I think once you get on the field, all that distraction, does go away in terms of the players on the field. But let's be real about it. I mean, I want to see if Antonio Brown's the same player. The catch, but down from 15 to 12-5 last year. That's a major red flag for me. Everybody's just assuming that he's the same star player he used to be. We will see. So for me, it's not worth the aggravation. Again, on the field, good to have him. I'm sure Derek Carr's happy, but I guarantee you Mike Mayock's not.
What do you think about the Raiders, that season win total over under 6 games? I mean, Antonio Brown, it kind of seems to fluctuate every single day. How do you view the Raiders right now?
Look, the Raiders aren't very good. I think they're, a year away from even being a team that can compete for a playoff spot in a tough division. If they get to that over, I will be astounded, even with Antonio Brown. By the way, this will not be the last we hear of Antonio Brown and controversy in the Oakland Raiders. I guarantee it. There will be much, much more as the season moves along.
All right, stay tuned to that. Our thanks to Pete Prisco joining us over the phone with his insight and reaction to Antonio Brown, who Jon Gruden says will play Monday night against the Broncos. Also, our thanks to John Breach joining us earlier today. Well, Jon Gruden, here he is, talking about having AB 84 back out in the East Bay.
I'll just say Antonio's back today. We're really excited about that. Ready to move on. He's had a lot of, obviously, time to think about things, and we're happy to have him back. And I know Raider Nation is excited about that, too. All right?
All right, guys. Thank you very much.
Monday night? That's the plan. That's the plan. Yes.
That is the head coach talking about it. More on Antonio Brown. It was the feet, then the helmet, then all the drama. Now he will play Monday night against the Broncos. More from HQ next.
I'll just say Antonio's back today. We're really excited about that. Ready to move on. He's had a lot of, obviously, time to think about things, and we're happy to have him back. And I know Raider Nation is excited about that, too. All right?
All right, guys. Thank you very much.
Monday night.
We are following breaking news here at CBS Sports HQ, and Chucky himself delivering that news to the world. Antonio Brown will play Monday night in the Raiders-Broncos game. There will be no suspension. And you see the recent events, there's just really too many to keep up, and I'm sure by now, like a really good reality show, you're already caught up to speed. I have Jamie Eisenberg here with me. You know, Jamie, I know you were just talking about this on Fantasy Football Today. Maybe you thought you were done. I was with Will Brinson earlier on HQ, and we thought we were done. And silly rabbits, tricks are for kids. And one thing I'm seeing now on Twitter is all these fantasy owners that had AB trying to find that relieved GIF that they can post right now. Your big takeaway here, latest development.
New meaning to the phrase "just win, baby," because that's all you can say about this is that he's been a baby, and the Raiders are allowing this to happen. I mean, can you imagine if you're Mike Mayock right now? How do you feel? He's got to be a sick feeling as a general manager, and fantasy managers are cautiously optimistic, I guess, at this point, because now you're going to have him for hopefully 16 games. Let's hope this is the final thing. But I said all along that there was going to be something else, and I still think there's going to be something else. You know, we have yet to see what the on-field backlash will be when he starts to deal with bad throws from Derek Carr, which is natural from any quarterback. But he had such a rapport with Ben Roethlisberger. When he starts to deal with the losing, because last year was really the first time in his tenure that he had just a miserable situation on the field. Is he going to pout about something again? Are they going to find him again and he's going to have an issue with it? There's something is still going to happen. So I still think that if he goes out and has a big game on Monday, which he's capable of doing because it's a spotlight game and you know all eyes are going to be on him, sell high. Absolutely sell high the minute that you possibly can. So I don't think this is the end of it. But again, fantasy-wise, good thing that he's playing because at least you don't have to take that 0.
Yeah, so you get time to fill in that lineup for Monday, and that's the late game. So usually you got to make decisions if you weren't going to play Antonio Brown to play and start someone else. Let's bring in Will Brinson into the conversation. And Will, it looks like it was an apology, an emotional one this morning that helped lead to this decision. What are your big takeaways here now that we know that Antonio Brown will indeed play?
Remember that Seinfeld episode where George smears strawberries all over the Babe Ruth jersey, and then he attaches the trophy to the back of his car and he drives around the parking lot screaming, "Steinbrenner, you're an idiot!" That's basically what Antonio Brown did. And just like Costanza, he's getting a promotion. He's getting the benefits of being a good soldier, of being a good teammate. He's getting no punishment at all. This is the equivalent of catching your teenager smoking 4 times in a 2-week span and giving him a new car. I mean, what is happening? This is a slap in the face to Mike Mayock. It's a slap in the face to everyone else who's been on that team, at training camp, at the preseason, working hard, trying to make the roster. It's a reminder that ultimately, when teams want to win, Jamie's spot on. It's a just win baby for this crybaby situation, that they will do virtually anything. It's also a reminder that Jon Gruden is in charge of this franchise. He has a 10-year, $10 million contract in his back pocket. He was humiliated by what happened last year. He's humiliated that he traded for Antonio Brown and he couldn't control him and couldn't get anything on, couldn't keep this guy under wraps. And he's willing to push, bad money after good in order to try and win some football games this year. And if you think this is the last time that Antonio Brown blows up, I got some waterfront property by a power plant I'll sell you.
Jamie, what do you think here?
I mean, I agree. I don't think this is the end of it. That's the frustrating part, is that there's going to be another shoe that drops, and we're going to have to be sitting up here talking about Antonio Brown again. I just think it's going to be something on the field related, as opposed to this crazy stuff. Like, you can't make this up. You cannot make this up. Will's covered the NFL for a long time. Once upon a time, before I was a fantasy guy, I used to cover the Miami Dolphins. You'd go into locker rooms all the time, Tommy, and you'd see the little yellow envelope sitting there on somebody's locker, by their chair, whatever the case may be, and everybody gets fined. They never talk about it. Now, this was pre-social media, pre all this stuff, where guys are a little bit more active and vocal in connecting with their fans. But you would never hear anybody say, I got fined for a uniform violation. I got fined for, missing practice. He's going to make things public. And so what's the next thing that's going to happen with him? We can't predict it, because cryotherapy, helmet saga, and now this, and he's going after the general manager. Yeah, I mean, if you're Mike Mayock, how could you even be comfortable in the role that you're in right now when you are supposed to be in a position of power, and the players that are supposed to be, in essence, listening to you as the disciplinarian of the team can get away with whatever they want?
Yeah, first with AB, it was his feet, then it was his helmet, then it was his mouth getting him in trouble, and now he's going to be able to play in the season opener after possibly facing, a suspension. And Will, what do you think about this whole situation with the Raiders, a team that is going to go to Las Vegas sooner rather than later, and it's a team that Jon Gruden's in year 2 of a 10-year mega deal. When you look at what's going on, because when we talk about successful franchise, it's about the synergy and the harmony between the front office, the head coach, and the star players. Now, we know AB's not exactly the leader. Derek Carr and some other ones will be that way. How best do you describe what's
He's
going
the general manager at this point. I mean, he can do whatever he wants.
Well, what do you think about the whole thing right now?
Look, mea culpa here. I said on CBS Sports HQ and on our podcast and anywhere I could say it, that I thought the Raiders would use this as an excuse, a get out of jail free card, to get rid of Antonio Brown and his hefty salary and his crazy behavior. And they aren't getting rid of him. They're doubling down. They could suspend him week 1 and use that as a conduct detrimental suspension to try and get the 2020 guarantees voided in order to at least give themselves some protection next year in the event that, I don't know, this guy goes insane. I cannot fathom how Mike Mayock can continue to work there given what's gone down. I mean, I'm not saying that, I don't want to use the phrase emasculated, but I feel like, you are a guy in Mike Mayock who you're supposed to be, you're the GM. You're the face of the front office. You're in charge of this team. You're constructing this roster and building through the draft and building through player personnel. And you're the guy who wrote the letter to Antonio Brown telling him he would be fined for skipping practice. And now this guy went off on you in front of the entire team. And the coach, who is your boss, and we all knew that, but it wasn't, publicly expressed, just shrugged it off and is going to let him come play on Monday because he's too worried about winning. Now, look, I get it. Winning's important. It matters. But, man, if you're Mike Mayock, I don't know how you can sit there and continue to work with Jon Gruden and continue to work with the Raiders. You're looking back at, like, Daniel Jeremiah, who filled his job, has his feet up, studying some college tape. You're pretty jealous right now.
Jamie, from a fantasy perspective and the Oakland Raiders, who gets elevated, who maybe gets downgraded?
I mean, they all get downgraded if he's back. We were quickly rushing up, rightfully so. Tyrell Williams, who, once upon a time when he was thrust into the #1 role in 2016 with the Chargers after Keenan Allen suffered a torn ACL, was fantastic. The hope was going to be that maybe that was his opportunity again. Darren Waller, we know about our colleague Dave Richard, who's in love with him as a sleeper tight end this year. He gets a little depressed value now because of Antonio Brown being back and usurping targets. Hunter Renfrow, I picked him up in some deeper leagues just with the thought of him having an opportunity as the second receiver. Now he goes back to being the third receiver. So the only one who gets elevated along with Antonio Brown is Derek Carr because now he has a talented weapon to throw to. But the other guys, they all lose in this regard. Now, maybe you can make an argument that this helps Josh Jacobs. I don't know if it was going to really make that much of a difference one way or the other. You know, there isn't a bigger threat on the field to threaten defenses, so that will help him. But he was still going to be started regardless of Antonio Brown or not. So, look, I just hope, again, you know, if you drafted Antonio Brown and you have high expectations for him, I hope this is the end of it and that we get 16 games of not the same production. It was never going to be the same production. You don't lose Ben Roethlisberger in the system that he was in, plus being a year older, and continue to be at the same level or get better. He was going to be less of a player, less of a fantasy option, but still good enough to start as long as he's on the field. The best ability is availability, and now you have him available to you for week 1.
All right, well, I'm going to give you one final word here on Antonio Brown playing Monday night.
I'm stunned. I mean, it's stunning. It is. Like JB said, I mean, like I'm not some grizzled veteran like Pete Prisker or anything, but I mean, this is my 10th year covering the NFL for CBS. I mean, I've been around the block at least once or twice, and I mean, like this is a full season's worth of crazy from a top tier diva wide receiver, and he jammed it into 24 hours, ignoring the whole. He burned his feet with cryotherapy, and you know and all the other stuff leading up to the helmet grievances. This is an incredible 24 hours that, frankly, we will never forget. And I bet, guys, that we do it again pretty soon.
All right, our thanks to Will Brinson there chiming in, offering his thoughts on Antonio Brown. And again, this is a guy who is still in the spotlight on Tyreek Hill getting a deal and the 100th season celebration.
Just imagine that, Tommy. Imagine that where we are from where the offseason was, that Tyreek Hill is getting a contract extension and everything is headed in a positive direction for him, thankfully. And Antonio Brown, who's been among the best receivers in NFL history over the last 5 years. You know, what he's done in that last 5-year stretch is among the best of all time. And here we are dealing with him in this headache of all things that he has become.
Yeah, he has really brought himself again into the spotlight, not only today with the Tyreek Hill news. You talk about Bears-Packers opening 100 season of the NFL, and we were all just talking about him possibly being suspended, his agent Drew Rosenhaus having to go to bat for him and try to be peacemaker, and apparently it worked out, you know, whether he told AB to go make that emotional plea or not to the team captains or not. There's also sort of a ripple effect. I mean, guys are getting paid this week. We've seen Zeke Elliott, Jared Goff, Lyle Collins, just to name a few, obviously get their big deals. Then there's guys like Julio Jones, who's still waiting for his. He's been quiet. He's kind of the anti-Antonio Brown. Now, he's got a make good from Arthur Blank, but so far that's nothing in stone.
If I'm Julio Jones, I do not step foot on the field Sunday against Minnesota because all you've heard for months, essentially, you know, certainly the last 6 weeks since Michael Thomas got his deal is, you're next, you're getting paid, it's going to happen. All the things that they should be saying, but there's no check, there's no contract, there's no guarantee that says this is what you're getting. So now it's his opportunity to say, okay, I'm not going to maybe go to the Ezekiel Elliott extreme and go to Cabo. I'm not going to go maybe to the Melvin Gordon extreme and say I'm not going to play until you pay me. But I may just make you think I might do that. And so it's in his best interest to not step on the field without the contract if that's something he wants to do. Now, obviously, for what we talk about fantasy-wise, that would stink because you don't want to have a situation without Julio Jones playing for you, being able to put it into your lineup. The Falcons obviously would like to have him out there. So the fact that Dan Quinn said what he said today, essentially saying that they're working tirelessly to get this done, lends itself to believe that you may hear a contract extension between now and Sunday morning. Saturday probably be the day. Friday night, you know, the typical Friday news dump, as we tend to talk about in the news business. So I hope that we find out that the Falcons, Arthur Blank, the Julio Jones, his representatives, can come together and they make him what should be the highest paid wide receiver. While Michael Thomas has held this perch again for about 6 weeks, Julio Jones should supersede him. All
right, got about a minute left to go. Dirk Cutter's back. Julio Jones, I know, has been a fantasy guy, although the red zone targets and production has been a bit of an issue. In theory, if he comes back, look, maybe he misses week 1, but he's going to be there for the full season. What was the Julio Jones outlook going to be?
Oh, I mean, he's in the top 3 conversation. You know, when you compare him to DeAndre Hopkins, Devontae Adams, if you want to throw some other guys up there, Odell Beckham, Juju Smith-Schuster, you know, the best going into the 2019 campaign what Julio Jones does from a catch and yard standpoint, you could put 1,600 yards down, basically averages 100 yards per game. That's been over the course of his career. And so you bring up Dirk Cutter's name, it's important here because the last time he was the offensive coordinator for the Falcons, it's the only time that Julio Jones has scored 10 touchdowns. It's been exactly 10. Every other year of his career, it's been 9 or less. Now, we had Roddy White on our Fantasy Football Today telethon come on the set with us, former teammates with Julio Jones in Atlanta when Dirk Cutter was there. And I said to him, you know, is this going to be the year that he gets to 10? And he goes, Dirk. And remember, he held up his finger. He goes, Dirk. And he said, Dirk's going to get him, you know, more shots from the 25-yard line and out. So not necessarily in the red area. Give him the opportunity to make some short area touchdowns, not necessarily these big, long plays, but long enough that it's not, quote-unquote, red zone touchdowns, red zone targets. So you can't necessarily stack against Julio Jones when you get inside the 5 or 10.
All right, Julio Jones reunited with Dirk Cutter, hoping for that production from earlier in the decade when it was Roddy White, Julio Jones, and Tony Gonzalez. Back to Antonio Brown, the recent events. I mean, that is a month's worth of events that some players never go through in their entire careers. And again, the bottom one is the most important one, where his head coach, Jon Gruden, saying today that he will play Week 1 against the Broncos. All right, we got more CBS Sports HQ coming up. Boy, you know, the next time we talk about Antonio Brown, he may be coaching the team, Jamie. We'll see.